I'm here with Mayor Jerry Jones, who came across minutes from a Board of Commissioners meeting back in 1918 when the Spanish flu was being dealt with in this area. We noticed that there were a lot of similarities in the document that is happening now, like public places are closed, like churches and schools, and they were prohibiting, I think their number was 6, more than 6 people were not allowed in a public area at once. Correct. And also in stores, only 6 people were allowed in there. So I'm curious, how did you come across this document?
Well, you know what is so interesting to me when we came across this document? Well, there's an old saying that times change, but people don't. And this is another prime example of it. I did not know the documents exist. And what we're talking about are the minutes of 1918 during the Spanish flu. And our city clerk did some research. Now, city clerks are some of my favorite people because they're the historians of our governments, of our history. And she did a little research and she found it. And it's not like things are computerized back then like they are now, although we've been working to get things indexed. And when she sent it to me it was just so intriguing. When you, times change, but people don't. And when you look into these documents, and this was over 100 years ago, and the first thing they recognized, the medical field and the governmental body, which were the commissioners of Morehead City back then, and the mayor, recognized that to get control of this pandemic, that we have to separate. We have to we call it social distancing. Back then, they didn't refer to it as that term. It was just that they recognized that we cannot gather more than 6 people at one place. They closed churches. Now, that was probably a huge deal back then in the early 1900s to say you cannot go to your house of worship on a Sunday morning or Sunday evening or Wednesday evening. I got tickled because they called them moving picture shows. Now we call them theaters.
I saw that.
But they closed the moving picture shows back then. They limited the hours of grocery stores. They refer to them as meat markets because people still had to eat. I'm sure a lot of people grew what they needed back then, but they still had meats they had to purchase. So they limited that. They limited the hours. No social events, they called no invitational social events allowed. And if you really look back at a history over 100 years ago, we're following those same guidelines. And so it's proven, although now with our COVID-19 pandemic, I still don't think you'll never get your arms around it and really understand. But we're doing the best we can. Now, what was also intriguing back then, the Board of Commissioners, which now we have a council, back then they were commissioners, but had a little bit more authority. They were department heads. They more or less run the town, where now we have a city manager that runs the town and we govern the town. But they imposed a fine back then of $50. I can't even imagine. I know when my mother and father got married, my dad was making $35 a week.
I think in the document it said that the $50 fine back then translated to $50,000 here. I thought I saw that in quotations.
But that's just impressive. I mean, that would be scary to people, no doubt. And I don't, whether they would have enforced the fines or not, we don't know. But what they did, they got people's attention. Now it's just, I tell everybody, with this COVID-19, the only way we're going to get, and we're never going to get back to the normal as we know it. I mean, I realize that, but to get back to a newer normal as quickly as possible, although there might not be fines out there, we have to respect the leadership. We have to respect the medical fields, industries, and we need to all abide by the same rules. If we don't abide by the same rules, which evidently they were doing a good job with it back then because they got over it. With a lot less resources and information and knowledge that we have now. And so I feel like that we need to follow their lead. That's an expression I always use. How do we know where we're going if we don't know where we came from? Well, these people, they kind of set a little roadmap for us, and we need to look back 100 years ago and just recognize the leadership, and whether we knew that's what they did back then or not till after we made our decision, we're following those same guidelines and it worked for them. So we need to continue that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so did the council, when they were coming up with, regulations to put in place now, did they consider historic documents like this, or was it all purely coincidental that there were lots of similarities?
It was coincidental. I mean, there was no, we were all, we were anxious, scared, the unknown, didn't know really how to go, because most of the time when you make a decision, you've got some information to base that decision on.
Mm-hmm.
The information we had is we got a pandemic, and if we all don't abide by the same rules,
mm-hmm.
they're going to be, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be X number of deaths, and
mm-hmm.
I mean, we had statistics, but we didn't have any roadmap, any guidelines of how to get there. So, I was my suggestion to the council, and we were following the state and federal
mm-hmm.
leadership.
Yeah.
And although recognizing that locally we're not a big city,
mm-hmm.
But we still should follow the same rules. Everybody should.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we did not have any documents or guidelines or historical information to go on. We were just shooting it off the hip per se,
mm-hmm.
and that's not a fair assessment off the hip, because we are responsible leaders, so we know what we need to be doing, but
mm-hmm.
there were no clear and concise documents to follow.
Of course. And I'm curious, if you guys were able to find any information on the economic impact that the Spanish flu had back in 1918. Is that comparable to now?
It's probably more.
Uh-huh.
Now there's just so much more resources. I mean,
mm-hmm.
we're like Disney. It's a small world. Back then, it was a very local world. It might have been a national world, but now it's a world. We have not found any official documents how it affected them financially. I even know up to the year of 1957, when Morehead City celebrated their centennial 100-year birthday. That the finances then were not near as strong as they are now. So I can imagine they were even weaker back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I can even talking to my grandmother back then, it was just neighbors helping neighbors to get through.
Yeah.
And she even talked about, like, if you had food left over after a meal, you found somebody that didn't have
mm-hmm.
enough food, so you gave that to them, and they all shared together.
Yeah, well, that's neat that the community really came together back then like that. And I think that I see a little bit of that in this area, people helping each other, which is nice to see.
Oh, Morehead City, Carteret County, we're a giving community, no
mm-hmm.
doubt.
Yeah.
A lot of people have moved in here, and I think they in fact, I know they like what they see, and they're well received, and so they want to give back into the community.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of our citizens.
Yeah. Of course, great. Well, thank you so much, and remember to wear your masks and practice social distancing and everything. Don't get fined. All right. With the Carteret News-Times, I'm Caramia Valentin.